Occupational therapy is something that is dear to me just because it is something that I am currently studying myself. So I'm very excited about today and I'm excited to learn some more. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce our panelists again, and then we'll move forward and they'll be able to give a small little snippet about themselves. So again, we have Elizabeth DeLuca, we have Amy Anderson, and we have Lacey Sims with us this morning. All right, and just starting in the order that I read out names, Dr. DeLuca, would you like to go first with briefly speaking on your educational background, and you briefly speak about your current place of work?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Elizabeth DeLuca, as Shannon said, and I currently teach in the occupational therapy program at the University of St. Augustine. We have both a master's program and a doctorate program here. My educational background, I'm from New Hampshire originally, and I went to Quinnipiac University. I have a bachelor's in health science studies and then a master's in occupational therapy. And I recently got my doctorate in occupational therapy last year.
Perfect, thank you. And Amy, if you'd like to go next.
Good morning, I'm Amy Anderson. I'm the department chair at Austin Community College in the Occupational Therapy Assistance Department. I got my associate's degree here at Austin Community College in 2006, and then finished with a bachelor's degree in workforce something at Texas State. It's a great program for bridging up to a bachelor's in workforce leadership, something else, education. And then I got my master's of education through American College of Education. And currently I work here at the college.
Thank you, Amy. All right, Professor Sims, would you like to go next?
Hello, everyone. I'm Lacey Sims. I'm born and raised Texas. I got my undergrad, my bachelor's degree from University of Texas here in Austin, and then moved back up to Dallas, which I'm from that area originally, to get my master's at Texas Women's University, the Dallas campus. I've actually never even been to the Denton campus, which is their primary campus. And then, yeah, I have a clinical background. Is a big part of the last 10, 12 years is part of my work experience. And then I've been at the University of St. Augustine for about 4 years, but really just recently in the last few months have kind of went full-time at the university.
Perfect. Thank you all so much. And moving forward. All right, so now that we know introductions, know a little bit more about our panelists, can you now speak about your daily job duties and how has your responsibilities changed since COVID-19? And we can move in the same order.
All right, so I'll speak to kind of both of my current jobs. So like I mentioned, I teach at the University of St. Augustine in the OT program, but I also still practice clinically in home health, primarily with adults and older adults. And my daily job duties as a home health occupational therapist are scheduling my clients. I receive referrals from the agency I work for. I schedule my clients as they fit into my schedule. I also supervise OT assistants that work with the clients after I complete their evaluations and reevaluations. And I go to people's homes and I provide occupational therapy treatment in the home with them. So we work on their daily living skills. We work on their activities around the house that might have become harder for them because of an injury or a disability. And that's kind of the bulk of that job. In my teaching role at the University of St. Augustine, I teach a few courses about what occupational therapy is, and then also how occupational therapy is applied to older adults. So my duties there are teaching based, but also some scholarship with research and serving on committees for the university. Since COVID-19 in the home health role, a lot has changed, as you can imagine, in terms of PPE that we're required to wear when we go into a client's home. And we also have to complete our regular health screenings, both for ourselves and also for our clients before we go into their home. But otherwise, you know, the treatment keeps on keeping on. We haven't had, luckily, any dips in our caseload. If anything, there's been an increase because of COVID-19. And for teaching, as you can imagine, and you've probably all been aware, a lot of it had become virtual during COVID-19. And so that was a fun challenge to take on.
And then for me, my daily job duties now at the college are to teach classes. I teach a lot of classes and keep the faculty organized, assign their classes and all of the administrative things like that. Before that, when I was working, I've been at the college now for 7 years. Before that, I practiced for 15 years in the field in pediatrics and outpatient pediatrics and home health adults and skilled nursing long-term care adults. My daily job duties were fulfilling the plan of care that the OTR wrote. The OTR would come in and see the patient for that first visit and say, these are the things that we need to work on. And so I would go through that list of things that the OTR said we needed to do, and I would find creative ways to meet those goals. So they were things that the patient wanted to do to get better at certain things. And so we would find what really the patient liked to do and then use those activities to help make the patient stronger, help make for the children make their handwriting better, or help them move from room to room without melting down, or whatever their disability happened to be. We would work on what was important for them. And then always documentation. We did paperwork, nothing like the OTRs. The OTRs do lots and lots of paperwork. As an occupational therapy assistant, you write down pretty much what you did for that day, and then always talking to your OTR and saying, hey, this is where the patient is, this is what they're doing, and this is what I think we should do next. How do you feel about that? And what are your other plans? So really a lot of collaboration with the OTR on a daily basis. As far as change since COVID-19, I haven't seen patients during COVID-19. I've only been at the college. Our responsibilities have been absolutely the same: educate the students, get them out in the field. It's been a challenge. There's a lot of places that have closed down, won't let anybody in for the safety of their patients. And so my job responsibilities have gotten just a little more creative, as where else can we put a student and how else can they serve their community? Because we are a community college, we're always looking for that way that the students can give back to our community partners who are so generous in letting our students do their field work there. But it's kind of been the same for us. Please wash your hands, wash down your table, clean up after yourself, wear your mask. And other than that, not a lot of changes here at the college. The online learning, but the responsibilities all stayed the same.
Okay, so I too, like Dr. DeLuca, I'm doing teaching, obviously, and then also some clinic work. I would say as far as the teaching in my courses, I teach a lot of very hands-on courses, not a lot, but a few different hands-on courses. So I would say during COVID, really showing somebody where to put their hands and how to do, you know, certain tests and assessments was definitely a challenge. And, you know, Professor Anderson, you mentioned creativity. We had to come up with a lot more videos and resources, and my children were home with me a lot, so they became my little patients and my models for the students, and that kind of thing. So again, just sort of being creative with all of a sudden being forced into the home. As far as my outpatient duties, I'm a certified hand therapist, which means I usually work clinically with outpatients. So initially during COVID, my responsibilities changed because I didn't work. For a while, not only did I not have anything to do with my kiddos, but I'm a PRN therapist, which means I'm only used when they need me. And initially during COVID, people weren't doing elective surgeries, even if somebody, if as long as it wasn't a major trauma, even if somebody really, kind of needed something done, they were trying to put it off until hopefully COVID came to an end, or at least calm down a little bit. And then when I did go back to work, I saw, interestingly enough, a lot of people with musculoskeletal problems from working at home. They would go to their home. It's a lot of ergonomic lectures that I would give people and that kind of stuff, because people were forced into a home office when they didn't really have a home office. So their computer was too high. They were sitting on a bar stool instead of their lumbar, support chair and that kind of stuff. So basically the duties were the same: treat the patient, get them better, get them less pain, get them more functional. But some of the types of patients I was seeing and their complaints and the reason for their complaints has been a little different. But yeah, overall it's treating patients or educating students. So the fundamentals are still there.
Perfect. Thank you all for sharing. And Amy, when you were speaking, you were mentioning OTR. Could you just give us the title for OTR for our participants who may not know?
Sorry about that. An OTR is a registered occupational therapist, used to require a bachelor's degree, and then it required a master's degree. And I think they're up now. I think most of the master's programs are going away within the next couple years, and now requires a doctorate in occupational therapy. But that when they get their license from the state, it makes them an OTR, or a registered occupational therapist. Whereas someone with an associate's degree, when they complete their schooling, they sit for the board exam and they are registered as a certified occupational therapy assistant, or a CODA. We call them a CODA.
Perfect. Thank you. Right. Okay. All right. So what advice would you give high school students to prepare for a career as an occupational therapist? And then second part to this question, just briefly speak a little bit about your own experiences that led you to your position today, or positions.
I think my advice would be, if you're interested in this career, would be to just start, hopefully, and again, as Professor Anderson mentioned with COVID, some of the opportunities have become a little more limited with being able to go out and shadow. A lot of students will even just kind of cold call some places that they know have OTs and see if they're allowing students to come and observe and just see what the profession is all about. My advice is the more the better. As many different settings or as many different populations as you can see, to really get a feel for your interests. And since our career is so broad, working across the lifespan with the smallest of babies to the oldest adults. So I think the more you can shadow in different populations, the better, to get a feel for that. I think, and everyone else could probably speak to this a little bit too, but there might be some OT clubs at other universities, undergraduate universities. So that's always a great opportunity to join as well, just to learn more about the profession if you're looking towards the future of a graduate program for OT. My experience getting to where I am today, I was lucky enough to have an occupational therapist in my family. My godmother was an OT. And so I kind of grew up hearing about her stories and being able to shadow with her and see kind of what her experiences were like. And so I knew fairly early on that that's what I wanted to be. Since I knew in high school that I definitely wanted to be an OT, I was able to find a dual degree program, which are a little bit more common in the Northeast and the Northwest, where I went into undergrad as an occupational therapy major. And I got my bachelor's degree at the end of 3.5 years in health sciences, and then had a combined master's program that took a total of 5.5 for bachelor's and master's of OT. So that was kind of a nice option to be able to not have to take the GREs or have a gap year in between undergrad and graduate school. So that was a little bit about my educational experience. I think working clinically for about 8 years or so, I was, loved the job, but as Professor Anderson mentioned, there's a lot of paperwork that was starting to get a little bit draining to me. So making the switch to teaching was a really good fit to try to give back and give myself a little bit of a change up.
The advice I would give high school students right now is if your school has a health sciences division in the high school, I would say go ahead and get into that if you can. Because occupational therapy is very holistic. We look at a person from their mind, body, and spirit. We collaborate a lot with other health professions, a lot with physical therapy, with nurses, with social work, all of those. So any of those exposures that you have in any way that that program at the high school can get it for you is going to be really beneficial for you. One, in learning how to collaborate, and two, kind of learning the lingo. We always say when we bring our students in, there's the English language, there's foreign languages, and right in the middle of there is that medical terminology, and it's really hard to learn those terms sometimes. So I would say really try to immerse yourself in health sciences. This is an age of amazing things on the internet. Push all the buttons on YouTube and watch everything you can find about occupational therapy. Absolutely shadow. We've had students that have gotten into the 5th semester of the 6th that we have, and they say, I didn't know you had to wipe butts. I don't want to do this. And so it's kind of one of those things that it surprises you if you did all of your observations in an outpatient pediatric clinic. It's fun. They're swinging, they're having a good time. Or in a hand clinic, you know, they're sitting at the table and they're doing exercises with their hand. And then all of a sudden you get thrown into long-term care and there's drooling and there's life happening as we age. And it comes as a shock to some people. The other thing I would really recommend is really focus on your prerequisites. It's competitive to get into the programs, and you need to have a really good GPA, and you need to do well on those placement tests. So find out which programs will let you take them more than once. Truly study, put the effort into them, and do really well, especially in your A&P, anatomy, physiology, and any of those more social sciences or science courses. Make sure you get good scores there and focus on that.
I think all that was really good advice. Both, you know, look for the opportunities and focus some on those prerequisites. I actually don't like to talk about it too much because I don't know what I was thinking, but I was a theater major in undergrad. And when I decided I took about 3 or 4 gap years because I was trying to do something different. And then when I decided to go back to school, I had to go back and take a bunch of these prerequisites like A&P, the anatomy and all that, because you know, as a theater major, you don't really need to do that. And so when I called actually Texas Women's University and was like, should I bother? What's, you know, like more, what's the deal? And she said, do well in your prerequisites. You know, you have to have your overall minimum GPA, but she said, we don't care really what you got in like theater 301 or what, theater 101. It's more the classes that are going to feed into this actual career that I've chosen. And then as far as this kind of bridges from advice to my experience, just be flexible, look for those opportunities. If you can, if you feel comfortable with it, don't turn anything down, because you don't actually know what you're going to end up really kind of falling in love with. And I'll tell you, when I was in school, when I was in graduate school, I did not want to be a hand therapist. It seemed like a little boring sitting at a table and a little too detail oriented. And I did not ever think I would be in academics because I went to school to be a clinician. And these are two things that these opportunities sort of came up, and I ended up, because there was openings at my job, and, you know, or I knew somebody that at University of St. Augustine, and she was talking about how great it was, and just sort of led me to where I am today. And I actually love both of my jobs. Like the hand therapy clinic I'm at 1 day a week, my husband sometimes is like, you don't have to do that. You have this other job. And I said, but I want to, because I really enjoy going to the clinic. But I also, like I said, just recently came on full-time at the school because it turns out I really love it. So just always look for the opportunities and don't say no when something comes up, as long as you're comfortable with it. Or even slightly outside of your comfort zone, I think is okay too.
Perfect. Thank you for sharing. I always love this question because sometimes we get individuals who are in the field who start off doing one thing and then they're like doing something completely different. So very similar to you, Professor Sims. I started wanting to do one thing and now I'm over here exploring OT. So very interesting to see how you can start at one place and move throughout your career profile. All right, so let's move on to number 4. And as our panelists are speaking, definitely feel free to go ahead and put some questions into the chat. I think we did have one little question or something like that already, but we're almost getting towards our Q&A session. So feel free to go ahead and drop any questions you may have inside the chat box for us. All right, so next one, what can high school students do now to prepare for the Occupational Therapy Assistant Program at ACC? So Amy's question's more so tailored to you. And how rigorous is acceptance into the program, and what skills should students possess?
Okay, so for sure you want to go observe. We do recognize that it's hard to get in right now. So we're kind of for this admission period, which we take students. We take a group of students every fall. We take pre-COVID, we would take 20 a year. For the last 2 years since COVID's been in, we've taken 14 because we don't think it's ethical to take students into the program if we can't get them into the field. So we're kind of reduced numbers right now. We're hoping that for next fall we can go back to 20, but we're kind of sitting on that for right now. And also kind of sitting on that requirement for observation. We haven't required it the last 2 years because it just wasn't possible for students to get those hours. But if you can, definitely go get them, because even if you don't need them to get in, it's really going to help you down the line to make connections with what we're doing in the classroom and what you will be doing when you're a licensed professional. So observation hours, ask questions, ask a lot of questions. You can always email me. I'm right here in Austin. I answer a lot of questions. The college answers a lot of questions. We have open houses. Not sure when the next one again will be impacted by COVID, but we've had some virtual open houses where people can come in and see the exact number. I feel like it's 20. I would say double down and check our website for that exact number. And I'm going to make a decision on that in November. So it's coming. I apologize for the pending right now, but that's the nature of COVID, right? Everything is pending. So observations, hopefully we go back to having some workplace skills assessments, which come from your employer, or if you're getting your observation hours, those come from the person that you are observing. So they just kind of speak to how you presented yourself professionally. Were you on time? Did you ask questions? Did you interact well with the clients? Those kinds of things. So even in your interactions, if you're not observing, if you have a job at wherever you have a job, really making sure that you're being as professional as you can, because as a brand new student, you don't have any skills. All you really have, and any technical skills, I should say, what you have is professionalism and what we call the soft skills. Can I talk to somebody? Can I keep eye contact? Can I carry on a conversation? And those are just professional skills that are really important to have coming into the program. We actually have a list of technical standards that we expect, and those are on our website as well, of those soft skills. I have to say, because I kind of skipped on a question before that asked me how I got here. When I was a very young woman last week, I started as a rehab secretary at Easter Seals in California. And my job was this was back before we had computers, you had to tear it, the treatment notes came in triplicate. And my job was to tear off the white one, paste it in the chart, send the pink one over to be filed, and send the yellow one to billing. And that was my job. And so I was reading those every day coming from OT, and I was like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. What is this? And so the OT started explaining to me And she started watching me while I was sitting in my chair working, and I sat bolt upright with really good posture. So when it came time for them to hire an occupational therapy aide, she said, will you do it? You're the only applicant that I've seen that sits up straight. Like, that's not what you're thinking about while you're in a job interview. You're thinking about, did I say it right? Did I explain myself? And she was looking at my posture. Was I going to be strong enough to sustain what the kids do to you when they're on a swing and that kind of thing? So you never know, right? Those professional skills that you're putting out there, no matter where you work, are going to really help prepare you for your success in the program. As far as rigorous, we generally have between 60 to 90 applicants for those 20 spots. The average GPA of the students that get in is a 3.8. So pretty rigorous, and that's averaged from those courses that are prerequisites, which is the English, A&P, what do you call it? Growth and development, and psychology. Those are those prereqs that you have to have. So really make sure that you get those scores really as high as you can. And then we take a TEAS test as well. We take the scores from that, and all of those things are kind of weighted. Each of them has a certain percent that goes into your score, and that ranks you for getting into the program. Did I answer all of that? I feel like it did.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much for that, Amy. And while you were speaking about how rigorous the program is, it reminded me of when I was applying to University of St. Augustine, and I was freaking out about getting accepted into the program. It's definitely nerve-wracking and things like that. But for any of our students or teachers, on the call who may be interested, Professor Sims and Dr. DeLuca, do you guys want to speak a little bit about how rigorous it is for a graduate level for a student to get accepted? Because I remember how I was freaking out when it came to that part for me.
I can share a little bit, and then I'll let Professor Sims jump in. It is, again, somewhat rigorous. We do look at similar situation where we did require a certain number of observation shadowing hours that we were waiving, kind of partially waiving due to COVID. And so I'm not sure the status of that as well as the GRE test, which again, we have currently been waiving slightly due to COVID and looking at some of our program outcomes to look at the GRE. I don't know what our average GRE score is off the top of my head. But then we also do look at GPA requirements for overall GPA, but then also the GPA for those courses, as mentioned, that really funnel into what we're looking at with OT. And Professor Sims, anything to add to that?
I would say it depends on how flexible you are and how many prerequisites you have, because I know when I was trying to get into school, looking at the different programs, it was like this school required this, but this one required this other class, but this one required the GRE and this one didn't. So definitely do your research, I suppose, depending on where you want to go. And I also noticed that there was several questions in the chat, and I just wanted to address sort of that, because it looks like the question was regarding CODA, which is COTA because it's OT assistant, CODA versus OTR or registered occupational therapist. And it's sort of a personal decision. I feel like, getting the full OTR, you would likely have maybe a little more opportunity later, because there are some insurance programs and reimbursement that don't always allow for CODAs. So I worked in several places that actually don't have CODAs, and then a few places that do. But it's definitely a much bigger time commitment. You're very more likely to have little bit probably higher student loans and that kind of thing. I actually had my bachelor's degree in theater from UT. And then a few years later, I looked into the CODA program. I went to an open house at ACC, and somebody asked the same question, and I'm very thankful for that person because I had fully committed to probably going to go back into this associate focused program. And they said, if I have a bachelor's, my grades are pretty good. I have this experience. And I think in a few years, I want to go back and do a master's anyways. And whoever that person was, I don't know if you know Professor Anderson, this was like in 2005. Whoever's running the open house said, if you have your bachelor's and you feel comfortable with committing the next roughly 3 hours of your life, 3.5, and that kind of stuff, then I would, and GPA was decent, I would just go ahead and try maybe for the OT program. So I did. I had to go, it's really 4.5 years for me because I had to go back over the next year and get all my prerequisites, which I might have had to do to get in the CODA program anyways, because I didn't have any of that stuff like I was talking about. But I had to go back and get the prerequisites, and then I had to apply. And then the OT program for the master's program for me was about 2.5 years, and then study for the board exam or whatever. So it's just, where do you see yourself in 5 years? What's your level of comfort taking on this amount of debt versus this amount of time? And, I would say definitely do your research. I actually don't have a very romantic story about how it led me to OT. I got on the Bureau of Labor Statistics website and just started doing research about up and coming job plans and median salaries and all that stuff. And that's how I found out. So the first time I ever heard the words occupational therapy or certified occupational therapy assistant. And then, the story goes on from there.
All right, perfect. And I see we have already a few questions in the chat, which thank you so much for, dropping your questions. We have one more question for our panelists, and then we have a small little video for you guys. And then we're going to jump right into that Q&A session. So our panelists will be able to answer all of our questions live for you. All right, so our last question here, also one of my favorite questions, more of a storytelling time. So can you describe a time you had to step out of your comfort zone to create a treatment plan for your patient? Okay, and in the same order.
Yeah, this is a fun one. I think as occupational therapists, this is like really every day for us pretty much. We're always trying to problem solve and challenge and be creative. I think in home health, I have to jump out of my comfort zone daily because we really just have to work with what the client already has in their home and try to, work within their environment and try to modify the environment as best we can to make sure that they can be safe and independent. I think a few fun challenges I've had that really pushed me outside of my comfort zone were kind of fabricating different types of devices to help people do certain things just based on what they had in their home. A fun example that I could think of is a client that had very limited use of one of their hands, but really wanted to be able to knit again. They really found that meaningful to them. And so we kind of created a stabilizing system for one of the knitting needles so that it would hold the needle in place on a table that she could kind of anchor it to and then use her other hand with the needle to knit. And so that was kind of a fun way to challenge myself and think about how we can create things just from what she's got in her garage.
Outside of my comfort zone, I have to think about that. We're given as an OTA, we're given so much free reign. The supervising therapist says these are the goals that we need to meet, and these are they give you some parameters of how to get there. Like you can use exercise or you can do activities. Right, activities is a really broad term. I would say for me, probably one of the hardest things to do was when I was working in outpatient peds. We had a feeding program for children that didn't like to eat certain textures. And we had to teach them how to play with their food to get a better relationship with food. There's to keep them from being malnourished, to help, keep from meltdowns at dinner, those kinds of things. And so we had to teach the kids that relationship. And it's kind of gross. Like when you start really playing with food, if you're having a really good time, and I actually do it for the students here, we get to a point where we're taking, what do you call those, veggie straws, and we're kind of crushing them and blowing them and making campfires, and we make them ears, and we make them eyeballs, and we make them whiskers, and we make them a toothpick. And there's a point at which I push the students then, and I do it to the clients as well, where we have to mix a texture. And so I'll add in some ranch dressing. And so I'll start here, and then I'll draw it on my face, and then it goes to lipstick, and then you start to see this. And so just I'm kind of self-conscious, and to make myself step out of my own comfort zone and just really put ranch dressing or ketchup or whatever it is all over my face, for the benefit of the client, was really hard for me. But the benefit that we got from it, that the child and the family got from it, was totally worth it, and I got over it. So I would say just stepping out of my own self-consciousness to do it was probably and continues to be my biggest hurdle. But yeah.
I would say as an OT, it probably widens every year, but my comfort zone tends to have a pretty big perimeter. So I don't know about stepping outside of my comfort zone, because sometimes it's hard for me to do that, because I'm just like, whatever. But certainly as far as I have definitely been outside my comfort zone. Like when I shadowed, one time the OT that I was shadowing she would go into the NICU, which is the neonatal intensive care unit. A lot of these kids are preemies. She was doing some consultation for these triplets that were like 3 pounds, maybe. They were the tiniest little babies, and she wanted me to hold one. And this is before I had kids. And even when I did, my kids were like almost 9 pounds, and I was very uncomfortable then. And I chose not to go into the NICU. So I never created any treatment plans myself. But you do have to, this goes back to what you said, Professor Anderson, about your creativity. Well, both of y'all and Dr. DeLuca, like that's really a part of our bread and butter. And one of my job duties at one of my jobs was to help people prepare to return back to work. Most of these people had been injured on the job. They were very far down the road. They were ready to return back to work. Some of them were firefighters, police officers. They really need to be at the top of their game. And so I'm not going to light my office on fire. I'm not light the clinic on fire. So you really have to simulate certain things. So I'd like create obstacle courses, because firemen sometimes have to get really low or climb really high. And I think I sat on this mat and had him drag me around, because they said a lot of times that's how they have to deal with people, is like drag them, keep them low to the ground and all this stuff. So I had somebody that he was a bulk trash collector, and he'd hurt his shoulder, but so much of it was throwing stuff like up over the little bin. And I didn't want to throw anything in the clinic. I didn't want to be responsible for breaking anything, but I went to my car and I got out. I happened to have like 4 or 5 of those like folding chairs in a bag, like you would see at a soccer game or something like that. And I got those out, and I did it with him. We just went out, we just started throwing him around. And I was like, I bet you can't make it over that branch. And, just that kind of stuff to just see how his shoulder felt. So, I was perfectly comfortable doing it at a time, but like to become up with that treatment plan, sometimes you really do have to challenge yourself and your own creativity. And like, what can I do that simulates this or acts like that? But it's fun, I think.
Yes, thank you. Some fall updates. Just as a reminder, myself, Shannon Scriven, I'm a career and education outreach specialist, and I serve Pflugerville, Elgin, and Manor ISD. My colleague, Stephanie, I think she's on the call this morning. She serves Austin and Del Valley ISD. And just as a reminder, we're here for any presentations that you may need for your classrooms, any resources that you may need, any labor market information that you'd like to share out to your students. We're here for any of the resources that you need. Definitely reach out to us, and we'll be more than happy to help you. And we do have a survey for our teachers and our counselors to complete, where you can just like ask us or tell us what speakers you're looking for your students, and what resources are you interested in learning more about for your classroom. And we can drop the link to the survey into the chat for you as well, if it's not already there. So that's all I have as far as the career side of things go, but I'll turn it over to Ashley to see if she has any updates for us as well.
Thanks, Shannon. I don't really have any updates, just letting everyone know that we are still holding tight. We still don't know if we will have spring clinicals or not. But as I hear more, I will definitely let you know. Good news is the COVID numbers are going down here in Austin, so that's always promising. So keep everyone posted as I learn more. And if there's any information you guys want to share with us, please feel free to utilize the K-12 work group to share information or resources. Thanks, guys.
All right, perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Ashley. All right, now moving into some resources. So like I mentioned earlier, we will be sharing this presentation out with you. So you'll have everything in this presentation at your own convenience. You can share it with your students or whomever you'd like to share this information with. And we'll also be posting this recording on YouTube as well. So you can watch it at a later date, share it with your colleagues, or again, whoever you want to. So a lot of resources on here regarding OT and the OTA and a little bit about ACC's OTA program and things like that. So definitely feel free to explore these links, these websites, the resources, especially if you are considering the field of OT. Okay. Just posting everything in the chat. All right, and as we get ready to close out the presentation for this morning, just want to shoot everybody a little reminder that there will be a survey dropped inside the chat box. So if you can go ahead and complete the survey, you don't have to, complete it now, but if you can complete it at the end of the webinar, we'll greatly appreciate it. So you can let us know, what do you want to hear from next? What industries are you interested in learning more about? And things like that. And we'll greatly appreciate your feedback on that survey. Alrighty. And then here's our contact information. So like I mentioned, my two colleagues, Leslie and Ashley, who are on the call, and myself. If you have any questions about anything, definitely feel free to shoot us an email. And like I mentioned earlier, I'm currently in school for OT at the University of St. Augustine. So if you do have any questions about OT and how hard or not hard it is to excel in the program, definitely I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have as it relates to your career and your education, and most definitely point you in the right direction. So my email is on the screen as well. So yeah, feel free to email us any questions that you have. And then lastly, as we get ready to close out, I'm just bringing up our social media handles again. So our career ladder email address, email us if you need any help with your resume, or if you're about to go on an interview and you're like, I don't really know what to expect. Definitely send us an email. We're more than happy to prep you for that and get you prepared so you're ready to go. And follow us on our YouTube channel. Like I said, this video will be posted on our YouTube channel, and we have so many other videos that highlight the healthcare industry on our YouTube channel as well. And then also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. This is where we post all of our upcoming events, what's happening with Workforce Solutions, what's happening in Austin and the surrounding areas. So feel free to follow us there at WFS Capital Area, and you'll be in the know of everything that's happening. So if we don't have any further questions, yeah, thank you, Carlene. If you don't have any further questions, I'll give everybody 12 minutes of their day back. And I want to just say a special thank you to our panelists for being on the call with us this morning. I learned a lot. I greatly appreciate it. And thank you to our participants who joined us this morning as well. And we will see you guys next month when we highlight another industry in the healthcare field.